Hi folks, this is Mr. Lessard bringing you your Week 3, Day 2 assignment for the Science and Humanities curriculum. In this assignment, we're going to be using the learning target. I will research community policing strategies in my hometown and analyze released crime and demographic data to make connections between crime, policing, and income. In our Day 1 cycle, we looked at how police use data to inform how they police a community. And we learned that data doesn't always produce results that are fair for everyone in the community. And so some of the problems with the policing in the community show up again in the data that is about the policing of the community. And so how do we use that data? How do we think about that data? That's what we're going to be looking at today. And so the first thing we're going to think about is how Springfield relates to the rest of the state and the national average as it relates to crime. So you're going to use your math skills to analyze this data, and you're going to determine how Springfield and Massachusetts have different crime rates. Next, you're going to move on to looking at some historical crime data. And in this map, there is different colors. Lighter colors represent lower crime rates, and darker colors represent higher crime rates. I want you to use this map and this other map that has identified areas that the police call their districts, District A, B, etc. I want you to think about what areas on this map have high crime and what areas they fall into on this map and identify them. As you move forward, you're going to also use the draw function that I have done in all of my assignments using this pen under the draw, right, to mark the location of your home and your school. And I want to think about, where did you live? Where did you go to school? Next, we're going to look at income in the different neighborhoods in Springfield. And we can see that on the right, this map shows us the average or median household income in these different places. And this map shows us how many people are living in poverty in those areas. And so I want you to find some identification questions about these maps. And then I want you to synthesize information from all four of these maps, the historical crime data, the police districts, and the two income graphs, to think about what are all these maps telling you when you think about them in combination with each other. What are some things that you notice? What are some things that you wonder? What are some things that you think the data is telling you? Okay, and so that is sort of a place to catch your ideas. And then I want you to think about your ideas personally. How do those ideas affect you personally? And what's some questions that you have around this data as it relates to you? Then we're going to kind of shift gears to how community policing works. And I want you to think about what types of evidence, what types of data would be really good for police to know, and what other pieces of data wouldn't really help them at all. And so I want you to pick all the pieces of data that you think would be helpful in preventing crime, and then I want you to rank them on the ones that you think are the most useful and the ones that you think are the least useful. And not all of them are going to be useful. Next, you're going to think about why looking at data alone is not the whole picture, right? Thinking about what we thought about in Day 1 and thinking about the maps and how the data that you see doesn't necessarily line up with the Springfield that you know in your mind. How does that data tell us an incomplete picture, and why is it really important to hear from real community members, especially ones that represent racial minorities or religious minorities or minorities that don't necessarily have their voice heard? Those people really need to communicate with police about what their concerns are, because they might not show up in the data because they represent a small minority. Next, we move on to a really interesting question where you put yourself in the shoes of the police commissioner and you use those maps to think about, where do you think crime happens? Where do you think we should have police officers? What areas are really big and hard to patrol? Okay, all those things go into it. And so this is some theoretical data about how the police commissioner may have distributed officers on a given day. I want you to look at this, evaluate it, and critique it. based on the information in these maps, would you place the officers in a different district? Would you think that any of these districts have not enough officers, or maybe they have more officers than they might need, and other areas are getting less? So I want you to come up with some actual arguments using the data from the maps, and I want you to think about how would you shuffle these officers around, and what evidence are you using to make those decisions? There's a lot of different things that you could come up with, and that is sort of what we're thinking about here, is that there's a lot of data and it tells a lot of stories, which is why it's really important to have lots of sets of eyes on this data, because the way that one white police commissioner may interpret the data and one black citizen might interpret the data might be very different. And if we don't have these people in communication, and we don't have diversity in the police districts to begin with, then this data could be used in a way that doesn't necessarily represent the full picture. And so that's what we want to think about in this assignment. And I hope that this was helpful, and I hope that you find it interesting as you complete it. Thank you.